The judge's laughter was not what anyone expected. Gabrielle sat perfectly still in the defendant's chair, her hands folded in her lap, watching the man in the black robe shake with amusement as he read the letter she'd submitted under seal. Across the aisle, her soon-to-be ex-husband Cameron looked confused, then annoyed, then something close to worried. His expensive suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and he wore it like armor. Like proof that he'd won. Next to him, Veronica crossed her long legs and smirked. She was wearing red bold, bright red like she was celebrating. Her hand rested possessively on Cameron's arm. She'd made sure Gabrielle could see that. Made sure Gabrielle knew exactly where things stood. Behind them in the gallery, Cameron's mother Diane sat with her chin high and her lips pressed into a tight, satisfied line. She'd worn pearls for the occasion. Real ones. The kind that said old money, even though everyone knew the family had been broke before Cameron's business took off. Their lawyer, a sharp-faced man named Richard Bolton, had his papers spread across the table like he was playing cards and held all the aces. He'd barely looked at Gabrielle during the entire proceeding. Why would he? The prenuptial agreement was clear. Gabrielle would leave this marriage with exactly what she'd brought into it. Nothing. Cameron had made sure of that. "You'll never touch my money again," Cameron had said to her just 20 minutes earlier, right there in the courthouse hallway. He'd said it loud enough for other people to hear. Loud enough to embarrass her one more time. Veronica had laughed, a high, cruel sound. "That's right, sweetheart." She kissed Cameron's cheek, leaving a red lipstick mark he didn't bother to wipe away. Diane had smiled then, cold and triumphant. "She doesn't deserve a cent." She never did. Gabrielle had walked past them without a word, her head high, her face calm. She'd learned a long time ago not to let them see her cry. Not to let them see anything at all. But now, watching the judge really laugh, his shoulders shaking, his eyes bright with something that looked almost like delight, Gabrielle felt the first flutter of hope she'd felt in months. Judge Franklin was old, maybe 65, with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes. He'd been hearing cases for 30 years. He'd probably seen everything. But whatever was in that letter had surprised him. He looked up, still smiling, and glanced at Gabrielle. Just for a second. Just long enough for her to see the approval in his expression. Then he looked at Cameron. The smile stayed on his face, but it changed. Got colder. Got harder. "Mr. Sterling," Judge Franklin said, his voice cutting through the silence. "I've read some interesting things today. Very interesting." Cameron leaned forward slightly. "Your Honor, I don't understand." "Oh, you will." The judge set the letter down carefully like it was something valuable. "You absolutely will." Richard Bolton stood up quickly. "Your Honor, if there's new evidence being presented, the defense has a right to review." "Sit down, Mr. Bolton." Judge Franklin's voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. The lawyer sat. "This isn't new evidence. This is a statement of facts that were apparently overlooked during the discovery process. Facts that changed the entire nature of this divorce proceeding." Gabrielle could feel her heart beating faster. She'd worked on that letter for weeks. Had checked every detail, every date, every document. Had made sure everything was accurate and provable. But she hadn't known if it would be enough. She hadn't known if anyone would believe her. Veronica leaned toward Cameron and whispered something. He shook his head sharply, his jaw tight. His neck was getting red the way it always did when he was angry. Diane shifted in her seat, her pearls clicking softly. "Mrs. Sterling," Judge Franklin said, addressing Gabrielle directly for the first time. "Or rather, Ms. Walker, as I understand you'll be reclaiming your maiden name." "Yes, Your Honor." Gabrielle's voice was steady. She practiced that too. Practiced staying calm, staying strong no matter what happened. "Ms. Walker, you've made some serious claims in this letter. Claims about your contribution to your husband's business. Claims about intellectual property and fraud." Richard Bolton shot to his feet again. "Your Honor, these are baseless accusations." "Are they?" Judge Franklin picked up the letter again. "Because Ms. Walker has provided quite a bit of documentation. Emails. Dates. Witness statements from former employees. Original proposals with her name on them. Financial models that she created. Models that became the foundation of Sterling Enterprises' entire business strategy." The color drained from Cameron's face. Gabrielle watched it happen. Watched the confidence crumble. Watched the fear creep in. "Your Honor," Cameron said, his voice strained. "I can explain. I'm sure you'd like to try." Judge Franklin set the letter down again and folded his hands on top of it. "But first, let me share something that I found particularly enlightening. Ms. Walker has provided evidence that the business you claim as solely yours was built on her intellectual property. Property that you presented as your own. Property that you used to secure investors, loans, and clients. Veronica's hand slipped off Cameron's arm. Furthermore, the judge continued, the prenuptial agreement you're relying on states that each party retains the assets they brought into the marriage. But if Ms. Walker can prove that the business was built on her ideas, her strategies, her work, then the business is an asset she brought into the marriage. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Bolton? The lawyer's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Diane stood up suddenly. This is ridiculous. Cameron built that company with his own 2 hands. Ma'am, sit down. Judge Franklin didn't raise his voice, but Diane sat anyway. You're not a party to this proceeding, and you'll remain silent or be removed from my courtroom. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Gabrielle sat perfectly still, her face calm, but inside she was shaking. This was it. This was the moment everything changed or everything stayed the same. Judge Franklin looked at Cameron for a long moment, then at Veronica, then at Diane. This case is going to require additional hearings, he said finally. I'm ordering a complete audit of Sterling Enterprises, going back to its founding. I want to see every document, every proposal, every email. And I'm freezing all marital assets until we determine exactly who contributed what to this marriage. Your Honor, you can't. Richard Bolton started. I can and I am. Judge Franklin's voice was sharp now. And Mr. Sterling, I suggest you find a better lawyer. Because if even half of what Ms. Walker claims is true, you're not walking out of here with anything close to what you expected. Cameron's face was white now. Completely white. Veronica was staring at him with wide eyes, her red lips parted in shock. Diane looked like she might faint. And Gabrielle finally let herself breathe. Judge Franklin glanced at her again, and this time he smiled. A real smile. A kind one. Ms. Walker, I believe you've been underestimated for far too long. We'll reconvene in 30 days. Until then, all business decisions regarding Sterling Enterprises require your approval as well as Mr. Sterling's. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Gabrielle's voice didn't shake. I understand perfectly. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. And just like that, everything changed. 8 years ago, Gabrielle Walker had been a different person. Not in the ways that mattered. She'd always been smart, always been driven, always been good with numbers, but she'd been softer then. More trusting. More willing to believe that love was enough. She met Cameron Sterling at a business conference in Chicago. She was 26, working as a financial analyst for a mid-sized consulting firm, and she'd been sent to present a paper on restructuring failing businesses. Cameron was 32, running a small tech company that was drowning in debt and bad decisions. He'd approached her after her presentation, his smile confident despite the worry lines around his eyes. That was impressive, he'd said, holding out his hand. I'm Cameron Sterling, and I think you might be able to save my company. She should have said no. Should have told him to hire her firm through proper channels. Should have kept it professional. But he'd been charming. God, he'd been so charming. He bought her coffee, then dinner, then flew her out to see his company in person. He told her about his dreams, his plans, his vision for what the company could become. He made her feel like she was part of something important. And when she looked at his books, at his financial structure, at the mess he'd made, she saw exactly how to fix it. You need to restructure your entire debt system, she told him, sitting in his cramped office with papers spread everywhere. You're paying too much interest on too many small loans. Consolidate everything. And these vendor contracts? Renegotiate all of them. You're being robbed. Cameron had listened to every word, his eyes bright with hope. Can you do it? He'd asked. Can you really save this company? I can, Gabrielle had said. And she meant it. She spent 3 months working on Cameron's company in her spare time. She should have charged him consultant fees. Her boss had been furious when he found out she was working for free, but Cameron kept saying he'd pay her back once the company was profitable. Kept saying she'd be taken care of. Kept saying he was falling in love with her. And maybe that was true at first. Maybe he really had loved her before the money came. Before everything changed. The restructuring plan worked better than anyone expected. Within 6 months, Sterling Enterprises went from nearly bankrupt to profitable. Within a year, they doubled their revenue. Within 2 years, Cameron was being featured in business magazines as a rising star in the tech industry. Marry me, he'd said one night over dinner at the most expensive restaurant in the city. The ring was huge, ostentatious, nothing like what Gabrielle would have chosen for herself. But she'd been so happy, so proud of what they'd built together, that she said yes without thinking twice. His mother Diane had been less enthusiastic. "Are you sure about this girl?" she'd asked Cameron at the engagement party, loud enough for Gabrielle to hear. "She's very common. Don't you think you could do better?" Cameron had laughed it off then. "Mom, Gabrielle's brilliant. You'll see." But Diane never warmed to her. Never stopped making little comments about Gabrielle's clothes, her background, the fact that her parents were teachers instead of business owners. Never stopped implying that Gabrielle had trapped Cameron, had used her brains to seduce him into marriage. The wedding was big and expensive, paid for by Cameron. Or rather, paid for by the company that Gabrielle had saved. She'd wanted something smaller, more intimate, but Diane had insisted on inviting everyone who mattered in their social circle. "Appearances matter," Diane had said, looking Gabrielle up and down like she was measuring her worth. "If Cameron's going to be successful, he needs a wife who understands that." Gabrielle had tried. God, she tried so hard to be what they wanted. The prenuptial agreement had been Cameron's lawyer's idea. Just a formality, Cameron had assured her the night before the wedding. Just to protect what we each brought into the marriage. You understand, right? She'd been too in love to argue. Too trusting to read the fine print carefully. She'd signed it believing it was a technicality, something that would never matter because they were going to be together forever. The honeymoon in Bali had been beautiful. Cameron had been attentive and sweet, the man she'd fallen in love with. But the minute they got back, everything shifted. "Gabrielle, I need you to quit your job," he'd said over breakfast their first morning home. "The company's growing so fast and I need someone I can trust to help me manage everything. Someone who understands the business from the ground up." "You want me to work for you?" she'd asked, surprised. "Not for me. With me. As my partner." He'd taken her hand across the table. "You saved this company once. Helped me make it everything we dreamed about." So she'd quit her job. Given up her salary, her career path, her independence. She told herself it was for them, for their future, for the family they'd build together. She became his assistant, his scheduler, his entertainer. She organized dinners for potential clients, smiled through boring business events, made sure Cameron always looked good, always seemed smart, always seemed successful. And slowly, so slowly she almost didn't notice, her ideas became his ideas. Her strategies became his strategies. Her brilliance became his brilliance. Gabrielle came up with this restructuring model, Cameron would say at first, giving her credit in private meetings. Then it became, "We developed this approach together." Then it became, "I've developed a new financial strategy." Just I. No we. No mention of Gabrielle at all. She told herself it didn't matter. They were married. What was his was hers, right? What was hers was his. They were a team. But teams share credit. Teams share power. Teams share respect. And year by year, Gabrielle had less of all three. "Why don't you stay home tonight?" Cameron would say when important investors came to dinner. "These guys can be pretty rough around the edges. I don't want you to be uncomfortable." "I've reorganized your filing system," Gabrielle would tell him after spending days cleaning up his disastrous record keeping. "Everything's chronological now and cross-referenced." "Great, thanks," he'd say without looking up from his phone. "I had an idea for the Peterson account," she'd mention. "If we restructure their payment schedule." "I'll handle it," he'd interrupt. "You worry about scheduling my meetings next week." 7 years. 7 years of making herself smaller. 7 years of pretending it didn't hurt when he took credit for her work. 7 years of swallowing her pride every time Diane made a snide comment about how Gabrielle was lucky to have married so well. 7 years of telling herself that love was enough. And then the phone call came. That phone call that changed everything. Gabrielle had been grocery shopping, trying to decide between 2 different types of pasta for dinner, when her phone rang. A known number. "Hello." "Hi, Gabrielle." The voice was female, young, dripping with false sweetness. "You don't know me, but I know you. My name is Veronica." Gabrielle's hand had tightened on the shopping cart. Something in that voice made her stomach drop. "I think it's time someone told you the truth," Veronica continued. "Cameron and I have been together for 8 months. And honestly, he's so much happier with me than he ever was with you." The pasta boxes blurred in front of Gabrielle's eyes. "I don't know who you are," she managed to say, "but if you're trying to cause problems..." "I'm not trying to cause anything. I'm just being honest." Veronica laughed, light and cruel. "Cameron's with me right now, actually. We're at the penthouse. You know, the one on 5th Avenue? Yeah, he bought that 6 months ago. For us." Gabrielle felt like she was falling even though she was standing still. "Ask him yourself if you don't believe me," Veronica said. But honestly, Gabrielle, it's over. You must have known it was over. I mean, when was the last time he even pretended to care about you? The call ended. Gabrielle stood in the middle of the grocery store, holding 2 boxes of pasta, feeling like her entire world had just shattered into pieces too small to ever put back together. Gabrielle drove home in a daze. She left the groceries in the cart, left the store, got in her car and just drove. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. Her breath came in short, painful gasps. She felt like she might throw up. 8 months. Cameron had been cheating on her for 8 months. A penthouse. He'd bought a penthouse for another woman while Gabrielle lived in their house, cooked his meals, organized his life and pretended everything was fine. When she finally pulled into their driveway, his car was already there. He was home early. He was never home early. Gabrielle sat in her car for 10 minutes trying to compose herself, trying to figure out what to say, how to even begin this conversation. Finally, she went inside. Cameron was in the kitchen, pouring himself a drink. Scotch. Expensive scotch. He looked relaxed, comfortable, like he didn't have a care in the world. "Hey," he said when he saw her. "Where's dinner?" "I'm starving. A woman named Veronica called me today." Gabrielle's voice sounded strange to her own ears. "Flat. Dead. She said you've been sleeping with her for 8 months. She said you bought her a penthouse." Cameron's hand stopped halfway to his mouth. The glass of scotch hung in the air between them. "She called you?" He didn't sound sorry. He sounded annoyed. That wasn't supposed to happen. Not, "It's not true." Not, "She's lying." Just, that wasn't supposed to happen. "So it's real," Gabrielle whispered. "You're really cheating on me." Cameron set the glass down with a heavy thunk. "Don't be dramatic. It's not like our marriage has been working for years anyway." The words hit her like a slap. "What?" "Come on, Gabrielle. You know we're not happy. We haven't been happy in a long time." He loosened his tie, casual, like they were discussing the weather. "Veronica is good for me. She's exciting. She makes me feel alive. I saved your company." Gabrielle's voice was rising now, shaking. "I gave up my career for you. I've spent 7 years supporting you, helping you, making you look good. And I've given you a comfortable life." Cameron's eyes were cold now, his jaw set. "Nice house. Nice cars. Credit cards with no limits. You've had it pretty good, Gabrielle. Don't act like you've been suffering." She stared at him, this man she'd loved, this man she'd married, and realized she didn't know him at all. Or maybe she'd always known him and she just refused to see it. "I want a divorce," she said quietly. "Fine." Cameron picked up his drink again. "My lawyer will draw up the papers. You signed a prenup, remember? You'll get whatever you came into this marriage with." Which was nothing. He said it so casually, so cruelly. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious." He finished the scotch in one swallow. "The company is mine. The house is mine. Everything is mine. That's what the prenup says. You'll walk away with whatever money you had in your bank account before we got married." Which, if I remember correctly, was about $5,000. Gabrielle felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "Cameron, I helped build that company. I created the financial models that saved it. I restructured everything. You gave me advice. I built the company." He was already walking toward the door. "I have to go. Veronica's waiting for me. I'll have my lawyer contact yours." "Oh wait, you don't have a lawyer, do you? Better get one. You're going to need it." He left. Just walked out the door like he'd told her he was going to the gym, not like he'd just destroyed their marriage and her entire life. Gabrielle stood in the kitchen for a long time after he left. She didn't cry. Couldn't cry. The pain was too big for tears, too enormous to process. Finally she moved. Walked upstairs to their bedroom, his bedroom now, she supposed. Started looking through drawers, closets, files. Looking for something, though she wasn't sure what. Evidence. Proof. Truth. She found Cameron's laptop in his study. He'd always been careless about passwords. Used the same one for everything. The name of his college fraternity followed by 123. She logged in easily. His email was a goldmine. Messages to Veronica going back even further than 8 months. A full year at least. Messages about the penthouse, about trips they'd taken together, about how much he loved being with her. How exciting she was. How different from Gabrielle. But there was other stuff too. Messages from his mother. Diane encouraging the affair. "Veronica is much more appropriate for someone of your status," one email read. "She comes from a good family. She understands our world. That wife of yours has never fit in and she never will. You should have listened to me from the start," another one said. But it's not too late to fix your mistake. His mother. His own mother had been pushing him to leave her. Gabriel kept reading, kept searching. Found files buried in folders buried in other folders. Found the original proposals she'd written for restructuring his company. Found them saved under his name with her name removed. Found presentation decks she'd created, now credited solely to him. Found everything she needed to prove that the company's success had been built on her ideas. She copied everything. Saved it all to a flash drive. Sent copies to her personal email. Made sure she had backup after backup after backup. Then she called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. The best divorce lawyer in the city. A woman named Patricia Morrison who had a reputation for destroying cheating husbands in court. "I need to see you tomorrow," Gabriel said when Patricia's assistant answered. "It's urgent. May I ask what this is regarding?" "My husband is cheating on me and he thinks I'm going to walk away with nothing. I have evidence that proves otherwise." There was a pause. "Ms. Morrison can see you at 9 tomorrow morning." "I'll be there," Gabriel said. She hung up and sat down at Cameron's desk in his expensive leather chair, and finally let herself feel it. The betrayal. The humiliation. The rage. But underneath all of that, something else was growing. Determination. Cameron thought he could throw her away. Thought he could take credit for her work, steal her ideas, and leave her with nothing. He was wrong. And she was going to prove it. Patricia Morrison's office was on the 40th floor of a glass building downtown, with windows that overlooked the entire city. The woman herself was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and sharp-dressed, with gray hair cut in a severe bob and an expression that suggested she'd seen every dirty trick in the book. "Tell me everything," she said after Gabriel sat down. So Gabriel did. She talked for an hour straight, explaining how she'd met Cameron, how she'd saved his company, how she'd given up everything to support him. She explained the prenup, the affair, the penthouse, his mother's involvement. She showed Patricia the flash drive with all the evidence. Patricia plugged it into her computer and started going through the files. Her expression didn't change, but her fingers moved faster and faster across the keyboard. "This is good," she said finally. "This is very good. Your husband used your intellectual property to build his business. That changes the nature of the prenuptial agreement significantly. Can we prove it?" Gabriel asked. "With this evidence?" "Absolutely." Patricia sat back in her chair. "But I need you to understand something, Gabriel. This is going to get ugly. Your husband has money and resources. He's going to fight back. His lawyer will try to discredit you, claim you're lying, say you're bitter about the affair. Are you prepared for that?" Gabriel thought about Cameron's face when he told her she'd get nothing. Thought about Veronica's cruel laugh on the phone. Thought about Diane's years of snide comments and barely concealed contempt. "I'm prepared," she said. "Good." Patricia smiled, sharp and predatory. "Then let's destroy him." Over the next 6 months, Gabrielle worked harder than she'd ever worked in her life. She tracked down former employees of Sterling Enterprises, people who'd been there in the early days. People who remembered her sitting in strategy meetings, her proposals on the conference table, her voice explaining complex financial models. "I always wondered why Cameron got all the credit," said Thomas Chin, a former operations manager. "Everyone knew Gabrielle was the brains behind the turnaround. We used to joke about it in the break room." Thomas agreed to provide a sworn statement. So did Jennifer Kowalski, the former CFO. "Cameron couldn't read a balance sheet to save his life when I started. Gabrielle taught him everything. She'd stay late helping him understand the financials before board meetings. Without her, that company would have failed." 5 former employees gave statements. All of them said the same thing. Gabrielle had been the architect of Sterling Enterprises' success. Cameron had just been the face of it. Patricia also hired a forensic accountant to trace the financial history of the company. The accountant, a quiet man named Robert Kim, went through 7 years of records with a fine-tooth comb. "These financial models," he said during one meeting, pointing at his laptop screen, "they're identical to the proposals in your files. Identical. Same formulas, same structure, same methodology. He didn't even change them. He just put his name on them." "Can you testify to that in court?" Patricia asked. "Absolutely," Robert said. "This is the clearest case of intellectual property theft I've seen in 20 years. While Patricia built the legal case, Gabrielle had to keep living. Had to keep functioning. She still lived in the house. Cameron had moved out completely to be with Veronica, but everything felt hollow now. Empty. Diane called once, 2 months after Cameron had left. "I hope you're not planning to make trouble," Diane said, her voice icy. "Cameron has been very generous. letting you stay in the house during the divorce proceedings. Don't ruin his life just because you're bitter about losing him. I didn't lose him, Gabrielle said quietly. He threw me away. There's a difference. You were never good enough for him. Diane's voice was vicious now. I told him that from the beginning. You trapped him with your little financial tricks, made him think he needed you. But he's free now. He's with a woman who actually deserves him. You mean a woman you approve of? Gabrielle said. Because that's what this has always been about, hasn't it? You never wanted me in your family. Smart girl. Finally figuring it out. Diane laughed, bitter and cold. Don't fight the divorce, Gabrielle. You'll lose. Cameron has the best lawyers in the city. So do I, Gabrielle said and hung up. She didn't tell Diane about Patricia. Didn't tell anyone except her lawyer what she was planning. She let Cameron think he was winning. Let Veronica think she'd gotten everything she wanted. Let Diane think she'd successfully driven away the daughter-in-law she despised. Meanwhile, Gabrielle gathered evidence. Built her case. Prepared her letter for the judge. The letter was Patricia's idea. Judges see hundreds of divorce cases, she explained. They're tired, they're busy, and they tend to just follow the prenup unless there's a compelling reason not to. We need to make this compelling. We need to make this impossible to ignore. So Gabrielle wrote it all down. Every detail. Every date. Every document. Every witness. She wrote it clearly and simply, laying out exactly how Cameron had built his empire on her ideas and then tried to cast her aside with nothing. Don't make it emotional, Patricia warned. Just facts. Let the facts speak for themselves. Gabrielle rewrote the letter 6 times until it was perfect. Until it was undeniable. Then she sealed it and submitted it to the court. And waited. The divorce hearing was scheduled for 6 months after Cameron had left. He'd pushed for an earlier date, eager to finalize everything and move on with his life. Patricia had delayed, saying they needed time to prepare. Really, they needed time to build an airtight case. The week before the hearing, Cameron sent her a message. The first communication they'd had in months. I hope you're being reasonable about this, it read. I don't want to embarrass you in court, but I will if you try to claim you deserve more than the prenup allows. Just accept the settlement and move on with your life. Gabrielle deleted the message without responding. The night before the hearing, she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. All the years of sacrifice. All the time she'd made herself smaller so Cameron could seem bigger. All the credit she'd given up, the recognition she'd surrendered, the dreams she'd deferred. No more. Tomorrow she'd walk into that courtroom and fight for what was hers. Not because she wanted Cameron back, she couldn't even imagine wanting that, but because she deserved justice. Deserved recognition. Deserved compensation for everything she'd built and lost. Tomorrow, Cameron would learn that throwing her away had been the biggest mistake of his life. Tomorrow everything would change. The judge stopped smiling, but his eyes still held that glint of satisfaction. He set Gabrielle's letter down on his desk and looked directly at Cameron. Mr. Sterling, your wife, excuse me, your soon-to-be ex-wife has presented compelling evidence that the business you're claiming as solely yours was built on intellectual property she created. She has time-stamped documents, witness statements, and forensic accounting to back up her claims. Would you like to respond to these allegations? Cameron's face had gone from white to red. His hands gripped the edge of the table. Your Honor, this is insane. I built Sterling Enterprises from the ground up. With her financial models, Judge Franklin interrupted. With her restructuring plans. With her strategies. That's what the evidence suggests. And unless you can prove otherwise, this court is going to have to seriously reconsider the terms of your prenuptial agreement. Richard Bolton was on his feet now, his smooth confidence completely gone. Your Honor, we request a recess to review this new information. It's not new information, Mr. Bolton. It's information that should have been disclosed during discovery. The judge's voice was sharp. Information that your client apparently hoped would stay buried. We had no idea, Bolton started. You had no idea that your client's wife was the financial genius behind his company's success? Really? Judge Franklin raised his eyebrows. Or you knew and hoped she wouldn't be able to prove it? Veronica leaned away from Cameron slightly, her red lips pressed into a thin line. The smug confidence from earlier had evaporated. She looked at Cameron like she was seeing him for the first time and didn't like what she saw. Diane was gripping her pearls, her knuckles white, her face a mask of fury and disbelief. The prenuptial agreement, Judge Franklin continued, picking up a copy and scanning it, states that each party retains the assets they brought into the marriage. Mr. Sterling claimed that Sterling Enterprises was an asset he brought into the marriage. But Ms. Walker's evidence suggests that the business in its current successful form was built on assets she brought to the marriage, namely her expertise, her financial models, and her intellectual property. That's not Cameron started. Let me finish. The judge's tone left no room for argument. Ms. Walker has provided testimony from 5 former employees, all stating that she was the primary architect of the company's restructuring and recovery. She has provided original documents with her name on them that match, word for word, presentations and models that you later presented as your own work. She has provided a forensic accounting analysis showing that every major profitable decision made by Sterling Enterprises in its first 3 years was based on strategies she developed. Patricia Morrison sat beside Gabrielle, perfectly calm, perfectly still. But Gabrielle could see the tiny smile playing at the corner of her mouth. Your Honor, Richard Bolton tried again, his voice strained. Even if Mrs. Sterling provided advice and assistance, the company was still founded by my client. Founded by your client and saved by his wife, Judge Franklin corrected. There's a significant difference. And according to the evidence, without her intervention, Sterling Enterprises would have failed completely within its first year. He looked at Cameron again. Mr. Sterling, did your wife create the financial restructuring plan that saved your company? Cameron's jaw worked. He glanced at his lawyer, at Veronica, at his mother. Finally he said, she helped. Did she create it, yes or no? A long pause. Yes. Did you present her work as your own to investors and clients? We were married. It was our work. Answer the question, Mr. Sterling. Yes, Cameron bit out. Did you compensate her for this work? She was my wife. That's not compensation, Mr. Sterling. That's marriage. Did you pay her a salary? Give her equity in the company? Officially recognize her contribution in any way? Cameron said nothing. The court will take that as a no. Judge Franklin made a note on his pad. Here's what's going to happen. I'm ordering a complete forensic audit of Sterling Enterprises, going back to its founding. I want every document, every email, every financial record. I want to know exactly who contributed what to this company. Your Honor, that could take months, Bolton protested. Then it takes months. In the meantime, I'm freezing all marital assets. Mr. Sterling, you will not sell, transfer, or otherwise dispose of any property, accounts, or business interests until this matter is resolved. That includes Sterling Enterprises. Cameron shot to his feet. You can't do that. I have a business to run. Then you'll run it carefully, Judge Franklin said coldly. And every major business decision will require Ms. Walker's approval as well as yours. What? Cameron looked like he might have a heart attack. She can't, she doesn't have the authority. She does now. This court just gave it to her. The judge turned to Gabrielle. Ms. Walker, do you understand what I'm ordering? Yes, Your Honor. Gabrielle's voice was steady, strong. I understand. Good. You and Mr. Sterling will meet with a court-appointed mediator to discuss all major business decisions until this case is resolved. Any attempt by either party to circumvent this order will result in contempt charges. Am I clear? Yes, Your Honor, Gabrielle said. Cameron said nothing, his face a mask of rage. Veronica stood up suddenly. Cameron, what is she talking about? What does this mean? Sit down, ma'am, Judge Franklin said sharply. You're not a party to this proceeding. But I'm his, Veronica started, then stopped. She wasn't his anything legally. Just the other woman. She sat down slowly, her face pale. Diane was whispering furiously to someone on her phone, probably calling in favors, trying to find a way to fix this disaster. Judge Franklin gathered his papers. We'll reconvene in 30 days. Mr. Bolton, I suggest you spend that time preparing a better defense than what you've shown me today. And Mr. Sterling, I suggest you think very carefully about how you want this to proceed. Because from where I'm sitting, your wife has a very strong case for receiving a significant portion of your business. Possibly a majority stake. A majority. Cameron couldn't even finish the sentence. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. The courtroom exploded into motion. Richard Bolton was pulling Cameron aside, speaking urgently in his ear. Diane was pushing past people to get to them. Veronica sat frozen in her seat, staring at nothing. Patricia turned to Gabrielle and held out her hand. Well done. Gabrielle shook it, and for the first time in 6 months she felt something like hope. Not hope that Cameron would come back, she didn't want that. Hope that she'd finally get what she deserved. What she'd earned. Justice. As she left the courtroom, she heard Cameron's voice behind her, angry and desperate. Gabrielle, wait. We need to talk about this. She kept walking. Gabrielle. He was following her now. This is insane. You can't seriously expect me to run every decision by you. She turned around. Patricia stood beside her, a silent guardian. You threw me away, Cameron, Gabrielle said quietly. You took my work, put your name on it, and then tried to leave me with nothing. What did you think was going to happen? I gave you a good life. You used me. There's a difference. She turned to leave again. You're going to regret this, Cameron said, his voice low and threatening. I'll fight you every step of the way. You'll end up with nothing anyway, and you'll have wasted months of your life on a legal battle you can't win. Gabrielle looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something. She wasn't afraid anymore. Wasn't hurt. Wasn't even angry. She was done. We'll see, she said simply and walked away. Behind her, she heard Veronica's voice, high and worried. Cameron, what does this mean for us? For the penthouse? She didn't hear his answer. Didn't care. She was finally fighting back. Finally standing up for herself. Finally demanding recognition for everything she'd contributed and sacrificed. And it felt amazing. The first 24 hours after the hearing were chaos. Gabrielle's phone rang constantly, reporters who'd somehow gotten wind of the story, old friends and colleagues reaching out, even a few vultures hoping to get gossip they could sell. She ignored most of the calls, letting them go to voicemail. Patricia called that evening. It started, she said without preamble. Cameron's team is filing motions to overturn the judge's order. They're claiming bias, procedural errors, everything they can think of. Will it work? Gabrielle asked. No. Judge Franklin covered his bases too well. But they'll try everything. This is going to be a long fight, Gabrielle. Are you ready for that? I've been ready for 6 months, Gabrielle said. The next morning she drove to Sterling Enterprises. The building she'd visited hundreds of times over the years, the company she'd helped save, now felt foreign and hostile. Security in the lobby gave her suspicious looks when she walked in. I need to see Cameron Sterling, she told the receptionist. Do you have an appointment? I'm his wife. And as of yesterday, I have court-ordered oversight of major business decisions. So no, I don't need an appointment. The receptionist's eyes widened. She'd clearly heard about the divorce hearing. Everyone in the building probably had. I'll let Mr. Sterling know you're here, she said nervously. Gabrielle waited in the lobby for 20 minutes. She could feel people staring at her, whispering. Let them stare. Let them talk. She'd spent too many years caring what people thought. Finally, Cameron came down. He looked like he hadn't slept. His tie was crooked, his hair disheveled. The polished CEO image had cracks in it. What are you doing here? He demanded. The judge said I have to approve major business decisions. I'm here to review what decisions you're planning to make. This is my company. Is it? Gabrielle kept her voice level. That's what we're trying to determine, isn't it? In the meantime, I have every legal right to be here. Cameron's face turned red. You can't just walk in here and... Actually, I can. Would you like me to call Patricia and have her explain the court order to you again? She pulled out her phone. He grabbed her wrist. Don't. Take your hand off me. Gabrielle's voice was ice cold. Cameron dropped her wrist like it burned him. People in the lobby were definitely watching now, phones out, probably recording. Fine, he said through clenched teeth. My office. Now. She followed him to the elevator, very aware of all the eyes on them. The elevator ride up was silent and tense. Cameron's jaw was so tight she could see the muscle jumping. His office was on the top floor, massive and expensive, with windows overlooking the city. Gabrielle remembered when it had been a cramped space with second-hand furniture. She picked out these windows. Had suggested the renovation that made this room what it was now. Cameron's desk was covered with papers. He shoved them into a drawer before she could see what they were. What decisions are you making this week? Gabrielle asked, sitting down in one of the leather chairs without being invited. Nothing that concerns you. Everything concerns me now. That's how this works. Cameron paced behind his desk like a caged animal. This is insane. You don't know anything about running a company. I know everything about running this company. I taught you how to run this company. That hit home. Cameron flinched. I have a meeting with the Anderson Group on Thursday, he said finally. They want to invest $5 million in a new product line. Which product line? The automated logistics system. Gabrielle thought about it. She'd heard him mention that project in passing before the divorce. Show me the proposal. What? The proposal. The business plan. The financial projections. I need to see them before I can approve the meeting. You're not serious. Completely serious. She pulled out her phone and started typing. I'll wait while you pull up the files. Cameron stared at her for a long moment, his hands balled into fists on his desk. Then, reluctantly, he turned to his computer and started pulling up documents. Gabrielle spent the next hour reviewing everything. The business plan was sloppy, the financial projections overly optimistic. The kind of work Cameron did when he didn't have her to check it. These numbers don't make sense, she said finally. You're projecting a 20% profit margin in the first year, but your cost analysis shows expenses that would put you in the red for at least 18 months. That's none of your. It's exactly my concern. If you take this deal with these projections, you're lying to investors. That's fraud, Cameron. And since I'm legally responsible for approving major decisions right now, that makes me liable too. Cameron's face went pale. I didn't the team put these numbers together. Then your team is incompetent. Or you are. She stood up. Fix the projections. Make them realistic. Then resubmit them to me for approval. You can't tell me how to run my business. Our business? Maybe. That's what the audit will determine. She headed for the door. Fix the numbers, Cameron. Or I'll block the meeting entirely. She left him standing there, speechless and furious. As she drove home, her hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Not from fear, from adrenaline. From power. From finally standing up for herself. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. How did it go? I made him fix his sloppy work, Gabrielle typed back. Good. Don't let him push you around. You have every right to be there. Gabrielle smiled. Over the next week, Cameron tried everything to circumvent the court order. He scheduled meetings without telling her. Made decisions unilaterally. Patricia filed contempt motions every time, and Judge Franklin was not amused. Mr. Sterling, this is your final warning, the judge said at an emergency hearing 3 weeks after the initial ruling. One more violation and you'll spend a night in jail. Do I make myself clear? Yes, Your Honor, Cameron said, his voice barely controlled. Meanwhile, the audit was underway. Robert Kim, the forensic accountant, was camped out at Sterling Enterprises with his team, going through every file, every email, every document from the past 8 years. This is even more clear-cut than I thought, he told Patricia and Gabrielle during a meeting in Patricia's office. Every major strategic decision in the first 3 years came directly from Gabrielle's proposals. Cameron didn't just use her ideas, he copied them word for word. Can you prove it in court? Patricia asked. Absolutely. I've documented over 50 instances of direct intellectual property theft. And that's just in the first 3 years. Gabrielle felt a surge of vindication. What about after that? After the 3rd year, the quality of decisions declined significantly. Cameron was making calls on his own without your input. Most of them were mediocre at best. A few were actively harmful. The company's been coasting on the foundation you built, but it's starting to show cracks. Meaning? Meaning Sterling Enterprises is worth less now than it would have been if you'd stayed involved, Robert said. Cameron's mismanagement over the past 4 years has cost the company significant value. That night, Gabrielle lay in bed thinking about everything Robert had said. Cameron had taken her work, claimed it as his own, and then run it into the ground without her there to guide him. And now he was facing the consequences. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're destroying him. I hope you're happy. Veronica. Gabrielle stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it without responding. Another message came through. He gave you everything. A home. A life. And this is how you repay him. Delete. You're a bitter, vindictive woman who can't stand to see him happy. Delete. Finally, Gabrielle blocked the number. She didn't owe Veronica an explanation. Didn't owe her anything. But as she put the phone down, she thought about how to respond if Veronica found another way to contact her. And she realized the answer was simple. She didn't need to respond at all. Cameron and Veronica and Diane could think whatever they wanted. Could say whatever they wanted. It didn't matter anymore. Because Gabrielle was winning. And nothing they said could change that. 3 months after the initial hearing, the audit was complete. Robert Kim presented his findings in a thick binder that landed on Patricia's desk with a heavy thud. 53 instances of documented intellectual property theft, he said, tapping the binder. Every major successful initiative Sterling Enterprises launched in its first 3 years was based on Gabrielle's work. And I have the evidence to prove it. The second hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Gabrielle dressed carefully, a navy suit, simple but professional. She wore her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She wanted to look competent, serious. Like the businesswoman she'd always been, even when no one acknowledged it. Cameron looked worse than he had at the first hearing. Thinner. Grayer. Veronica wasn't with him this time. Interesting. Judge Franklin reviewed the audit report for 10 minutes while the courtroom waited in silence. Finally he looked up. Mr. Sterling, I've read the forensic accountant's report. I've reviewed the evidence. And I have to say, this is one of the most clear-cut cases of intellectual property theft I've seen in my career. He paused. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Cameron's new lawyer he'd fired, Richard Bolton, stood up. Your Honor, our position is that any work Mrs. Sterling did was done as part of her marital duties. Marital duties? Judge Franklin's eyebrows shot up. Are you seriously arguing that a wife has a marital duty to build her husband's business for free and let him take all the credit? The lawyer backpedaled quickly. What I mean is that in a marriage, spouses often help each other. Help, yes. Create the entire foundation of a multimillion-dollar company and receive no compensation or recognition. No, that's not help. That's exploitation. Cameron looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Here's my ruling, Judge Franklin said. Sterling Enterprises was built on intellectual property created by Ms. Walker. Mr. Sterling used that property without compensation, without recognition, and without her consent. Therefore, Ms. Walker is entitled to 50% ownership of Sterling Enterprises, plus back compensation for 7 years of unpaid work. The courtroom erupted. Cameron's lawyer was shouting objections. Diane was on her feet in the gallery, her face red with fury. Judge Franklin banged his gavel. Order. I will have order in this courtroom. The noise subsided. Ms. Walker has two options, the judge continued. She can take her 50% ownership and remain a partner in the business. Or Mr. Sterling can buy out her share at current market value. Ms. Walker, which option do you prefer? Gabrielle stood up. She'd thought about this moment for weeks. Your Honor, I'd like Mr. Sterling to buy out my share. Patricia had advised her to take this option. You don't want to be tied to him forever through a business, she'd said. Take the money and start fresh. Very well, Judge Franklin said. The court orders an independent valuation of Sterling Enterprises. Once that valuation is complete, Mr. Sterling will have 90 days to pay Ms. Walker 50% of that amount. If he cannot pay, the business will be sold and the proceeds split between them. Cameron looked like he might be sick. Additionally, the judge said, Ms. Walker is awarded the house, both vehicles, and full access to all marital accounts. Mr. Sterling will receive his personal belongings and whatever is left after Ms. Walker receives her settlement. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Gabrielle felt like she was floating. Like the weight she'd been carrying for months had finally lifted. Patricia was grinning. We did it. We did it, Gabrielle repeated and started to laugh. Outside the courtroom, Diane tried to corner her. This isn't over, she hissed. We'll appeal. We'll fight this all the way to the Supreme Court if we have to. Good luck with that, Gabrielle said and walked past her. She heard Cameron's voice behind her, desperate now. Gabrielle, please. We can work something out. You don't need to take everything. She didn't turn around. Didn't slow down. Just kept walking. The valuation took another month. Sterling Enterprises was worth $12 million. Gabrielle's share, $6 million. Cameron tried to negotiate. Offered her $4 million to settle quickly. Patricia laughed in his lawyer's face. $6 million or the business gets sold, she said flatly. Those are the options. Cameron scrambled to find the money. Took out loans. Sold assets. The penthouse he'd bought for Veronica went on the market. So did his expensive cars, his boat, his vacation property. Gabrielle watched it all from a distance, feeling nothing but satisfaction. Veronica left him 2 weeks before the payment was due. Gabrielle heard about it through mutual acquaintances. Veronica had realized the money was gone and moved on to someone else. Someone richer. Someone who could keep her in the lifestyle she wanted. Cameron called Gabrielle's phone 17 times the day Veronica left. She didn't answer. Eventually he stopped calling. When the check finally cleared $6 million, deposited into her personal account, Gabrielle sat in her car in the bank parking lot and cried. Not sad tears. Relief tears. Freedom tears. She'd done it. She'd won. But winning wasn't enough. Gabrielle didn't want to just take the money and disappear. She wanted to build something of her own. Something that no one could take from her. She called Patricia. I want to start a business. A consulting firm. Can you recommend a good business lawyer? I can do better than that, Patricia said. I can introduce you to 3 former clients who tried to start businesses and failed. They need someone exactly like you. Within a month, Gabrielle had her first 3 clients. Within 2 months, she'd hired 2 employees, Jennifer Kowalski, the former CFO of Sterling Enterprises, and Thomas Chin, the former operations manager. Both had been let go by Cameron during his desperate cost-cutting to pay Gabrielle's settlement. Working for you will be a lot better than working for him, Jennifer said with a grin. Gabrielle named her company Walker Financial Solutions. Simple. Professional. Her own name, front and center. She rented office space in a building downtown, smaller than Sterling Enterprises but bright and modern. She bought new furniture, hired a receptionist, got business cards printed. And she started building. The work was everything she remembered loving about financial analysis. Solving problems. Creating strategies. Helping businesses thrive. Except now she got the credit. Her name was on the proposals. Her name was on the contracts. Her name. Her work. Her success. Within 6 months, Walker Financial Solutions had 12 clients. Within a year, 23. Word spread fast in the business community. Gabrielle Walker was the genius who'd actually built Sterling Enterprises, and now she was available to work with other companies. Her revenue in the first year was $2 million. More than Sterling Enterprises had made in its first 3 years. She bought herself a house. Nothing ostentatious, a comfortable 3-bedroom in a nice neighborhood with a garden in the back. She furnished it herself, every piece chosen carefully, every color exactly what she wanted. For the first time in years, Gabrielle felt like herself. Like the woman she'd been before Cameron, before the marriage, before all the years of making herself smaller. She was done being small. She was building an empire. Gabrielle heard about Sterling Enterprises' problems through the industry grapevine. They always heard the gossip first, the whispers about which companies were struggling, which CEOs were making mistakes, which businesses were heading for disaster. Sterling Enterprises lost the Morrison account, Jennifer mentioned casually one morning, looking up from her laptop. That's their second major client in 3 months. Gabrielle took a sip of her coffee. Not surprising. Cameron never understood the Morrison contract. I set that up, negotiated the terms. Without someone who understands their needs, it was bound to fall apart. They also brought in a new CFO, Thomas added. Third one in 18 months. Nobody seems to last there. Because Cameron was impossible to work with, Gabrielle thought but didn't say. She'd moved past needing to badmouth her ex-husband. His failures spoke for themselves. But the news kept coming. Sterling Enterprises was bleeding money, bleeding staff, bleeding reputation. Meanwhile, Walker Financial Solutions was thriving. Gabrielle hired 2 more analysts, expanded into a bigger office space, started turning down clients because they were too busy. It was a good problem to have. She was having coffee with a potential client one afternoon when she saw Cameron across the restaurant. He was with some business associates, all men in expensive suits. He looked tired. The confidence that had once defined him was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like desperation. Their eyes met across the room. Cameron froze, his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Gabrielle nodded politely and turned back to her client without missing a beat in their conversation. But she felt Cameron's eyes on her for the rest of the meeting. As she was leaving, he intercepted her by the door. Gabrielle, can we talk? I don't think we have anything to talk about, she said pleasantly. Please. Just 5 minutes. She glanced at her watch. She had another meeting in an hour, but 5 minutes wouldn't hurt. Fine. 5 minutes. They sat at a corner table. Cameron ordered coffee. He probably didn't need, his hands were already shaking slightly. Your company is doing well, he said. It wasn't a question. Very well, thank you. I heard you're the most sought-after consultant in the city now. I work hard. I deliver results. It's not complicated. Cameron winced. Look, I know things ended badly between us. You cheated on me, stole my work, and tried to leave me with nothing, Gabrielle interrupted. That's more than ending badly. But it's in the past now. Right. The past. He rubbed his face. Sterling Enterprises is going through some challenges right now. I heard. We could use someone with your expertise. Someone who understands the company from the ground up. Gabrielle almost laughed. Almost. Are you offering me a job, Cameron? I'm suggesting a partnership. You could come back as a consultant. We'd pay your usual rates, of course. We just need help restructuring some things. You need help saving your company, Gabrielle corrected. Again. He flinched. Yes, I need help. She looked at him for a long moment. This man who'd thrown her away. who'd taken credit for her work, who'd left her for someone younger and flashier and ultimately just as opportunistic as he was. "No," she said simply. "Gabrielle. No. I'm not interested in saving your company. Not again. Not ever again. I'll pay whatever you ask. It's not about money, Cameron." She stood up. "You had someone brilliant and loyal who would have done anything for you. And you threw her away because your mother didn't approve and your mistress was more exciting. That was your choice. Live with it." She walked away, leaving him sitting there with his cold coffee and his desperate expression. Her phone rang that evening. Diane. Gabrielle almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of her. "Hello. Gabrielle." Diane's voice was different, less imperious, almost humble. "I know we haven't spoken since the divorce. You called me a gold digger at the final hearing," Gabrielle interrupted. "I remember. I was upset. I said things I didn't mean. You meant every word." Pause. "Perhaps. But I'm calling now to apologize." Gabrielle laughed out loud. "You're apologizing? You. Cameron's business is failing. We both know that. And we both know it's failing because he doesn't have you anymore." Diane took a breath. "I was wrong about you, Gabrielle. You were good for him. Good for the company. And I pushed him to throw that away." "Yes, you did. If you would consider coming back even just as a consultant." "No. Gabrielle, please. You spent 7 years treating me like I wasn't good enough for your family. Like I was some kind of servant who should be grateful for Cameron's attention. And now that your precious son is failing without me, you want me to come back and fix everything? He's my son. And I'm the woman you tried to destroy. I don't owe you anything. I don't owe Cameron anything. I've built my own company, my own success, my own life. And I did it without either of you. But, goodbye, Diane." Gabrielle hung up. The calls kept coming over the next few months. Not just from Cameron and Diane, from Sterling Enterprises board members, from investors, from people who'd heard about the company's troubles and somehow thought Gabrielle should fix them. She said no to all of them. Then Veronica called. "I know you have no reason to talk to me," Veronica said, her voice small and uncertain. Nothing like the confident, cruel woman who'd gloated about stealing Gabrielle's husband. "But I wanted to apologize. For sleeping with my husband? For calling you? For gloating? For being cruel?" Veronica sighed. "I thought Cameron was this successful, powerful man. I thought I'd won some kind of prize. But it turns out he's just ordinary. Without you, he's nothing special." "I could have told you that," Gabrielle said dryly. "He talks about you constantly. About how smart you are. How much he misses your advice. How everything fell apart after you left." Veronica laughed bitterly. "I'm living in a studio apartment now. Did you know that? The penthouse is gone. Most of the money is gone. And Cameron's starting to look at me the same way he must have looked at you by the end, like I'm a burden he can't wait to get rid of." "I'm sorry you're going through that," Gabrielle said, and meant it. "Are you?" "I'm sorry any woman has to learn the hard way that Cameron Sterling isn't worth the trouble. But you made your choices, Veronica. Just like I made mine." "Would you ever take him back?" Veronica asked suddenly. "If he apologized? If he gave you credit? If he changed?" "No," Gabrielle said without hesitation. "People like Cameron don't change. They just get better at hiding who they really are. And even if he did change, I've moved on. I'm happier now than I ever was with him." After she hung up, Gabrielle sat in her office looking out at the city lights. Her office. Her company. Her success. She didn't need Cameron. Didn't need Diane's approval. Didn't need anyone's validation anymore. She had everything she needed right here. The email came on a Tuesday morning. Business Innovator magazine wanted to interview her about Walker Financial Solutions' rapid success. They were doing a feature on women-led businesses that were disrupting their industries. "This is huge," Jennifer said excitedly. "Business Innovator is one of the most respected publications in the country." "Should I do it?" Gabrielle asked. "Absolutely. This will bring in even more clients." The interview was scheduled for the following week. The reporter, a woman named Amanda Price, met Gabrielle at her office. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and professional, with a digital recorder and a notepad. "Thank you for agreeing to this," Amanda said as they settled into Gabrielle's office. "Walker Financial Solutions has become one of the fastest-growing consulting firms in the city. Everyone wants to know your secret." "No secret," Gabrielle said with a smile. "Just hard work and a genuine desire to help businesses succeed." They talked for an hour about the company, about Gabrielle's approach to financial consulting, about her vision for the future. Amanda was thorough, asking detailed questions about specific cases and strategies. Then she said, "I have to ask about Sterling Enterprises. You were married to Cameron Sterling, correct?" Gabrielle had known this question was coming. Had prepared for it. "Yes, I was. There were some interesting revelations during your divorce proceedings. Can you talk about that?" "I can talk about it professionally," Gabrielle said carefully. "I helped Sterling Enterprises restructure their financials early in the company's history. Those strategies proved successful. After my divorce, I decided to use that expertise to start my own firm. Court documents suggest you did more than just help. They suggest you were the primary architect of Sterling Enterprises' success. The court agreed that I contributed significantly to the company, yes. And your ex-husband took credit for your work?" This was dangerous territory. Gabrielle chose her words carefully. "I think Cameron and I had different perspectives on collaboration and credit. I've moved past that now. I'm focused on my own company and my own clients. Sterling Enterprises has reportedly been struggling since your departure. I can't comment on another company's internal business. That wouldn't be professional." Amanda smiled slightly. Very diplomatic. "But the numbers speak for themselves, don't they? Sterling Enterprises' revenue has dropped 30% since your divorce. Meanwhile, Walker Financial Solutions has grown exponentially. I'm proud of what we've built here," Gabrielle said. "My team is talented and dedicated. Our clients trust us because we deliver results. That's what matters to me now. Do you have any regrets about how things ended with your ex-husband?" Gabrielle thought about the question. Did she regret the marriage? The years she'd lost? The credit she'd surrendered? "I regret that it took me so long to stand up for myself," she said finally. "I regret that I let someone else define my worth for so many years. But I don't regret where I am now. Sometimes the hard lessons are the ones we need most." "That's a good quote," Amanda said, writing it down. "One last question. What advice would you give to women who find themselves in similar situations working behind the scenes while someone else takes the credit?" Gabrielle looked directly at the camera Amanda's photographer was using. "Document everything. Keep copies of your work. Don't be afraid to demand recognition. And if someone doesn't value your contributions, find people who will. There are always people who will." The article published 3 weeks later. It was 6 pages long, with photos of Gabrielle in her office, Gabrielle with her team, Gabrielle working with clients. The headline read, "From Shadow to Spotlight, How Gabrielle Walker Built an Empire from the Ashes of Her Marriage." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Her phone rang constantly with new client inquiries. Other women reached out sharing their own stories of working in someone else's shadow. Several business schools asked her to speak to their students. And the media requests kept coming. Morning shows wanted her for interviews. Podcasts wanted her as a guest. Other magazines wanted features. "You've become a symbol," Patricia said over lunch one day. "Women see themselves in your story. They see what's possible when you fight back." "I just wanted justice," Gabrielle said. "You got justice. And you got something better, success on your own terms." The Business Innovator article went viral online. Millions of views. Thousands of shares. Comments from women all over the world saying, "This happened to me," and "Thank you for speaking up." Gabrielle read every comment. She cried reading some of them. Women who'd been used. Women who'd been discarded. Women who'd been told they weren't good enough, weren't smart enough, weren't worthy enough. She replied to as many as she could. Offered advice. Encouraged them to fight back. To document everything. To never give up. One comment stuck with her. "I've been working for my husband's company for 10 years without pay or credit. After reading your story, I hired a lawyer today. Thank you for showing me it's possible to win." That comment made everything worth it. Every hard day. Every legal battle. Every moment of doubt. She'd not only saved herself. She'd shown other women they could save themselves too. The article brought something else. Speaking invitations. Universities wanted her to talk to business students. Women's organizations wanted her at their conferences. Leadership seminars wanted her expertise. Gabrielle said yes to the ones that felt right. She talked about financial strategy, about business ethics, about standing up for yourself, about recognizing your own worth. She didn't talk about Cameron unless asked directly, and when she did, she kept it professional, factual, unemotional. Because the truth was, Cameron was barely part of her story anymore. He was the chapter that had ended. She was writing new chapters now. Better chapters. Chapters where she was the hero. 2 years after the divorce was finalized, Gabrielle stood in the conference room of Walker Financial Solutions looking at the city skyline. Her city now. Her success. Her empire. The company had 50 employees. Revenue had hit $15 million. They just closed a deal with a Fortune 500 company that would double their business over the next year. Boss, you ready? Jennifer knocked on the door frame. The team is waiting for the announcement. Gabrielle turned around, smiling. Today they were revealing the new office space, an entire floor in one of the most prestigious buildings downtown. 10 times bigger than where they'd started. Room to grow. Room to expand. Room for all the dreams she was still building. I'm ready, she said. The announcement party was everything: balloons, champagne, excited staff members celebrating their success. Gabrielle gave a short speech thanking everyone for their hard work and dedication, promising them that this was just the beginning. As the party continued, she slipped away to her new office. Bigger than Cameron's had ever been. Windows on 2 sides. A door that locked from the inside. Space to think. Space to breathe. Her phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. Someone's here to see you. Should I send security? She checked the camera feed on her phone. Cameron stood in the lobby, looking small and out of place among her successful, bustling company. Gabrielle thought about it for a moment. She could have security remove him. Could refuse to see him. Could let him stand there until he gave up and left. But she was curious. After 2 years of silence, what could he possibly want? I'll be right down, she texted back. Cameron looked worse than when she'd seen him at the restaurant. Thinner. Grayer. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by something off the rack. He looked like what he actually was: a man who'd lost everything. Hello, Cameron, Gabrielle said professionally. Gabrielle. He looked around at her office, at her successful company, at everything she'd built. This is impressive. Thank you. I read the article. The one in Business Innovator. A lot of people did. You told the truth. He said it like an accusation and an admission all at once. About what really happened. About who really built Sterling Enterprises. I told my story, Gabrielle corrected. The truth was always there. People just weren't listening before. Cameron shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to apologize. For everything. For taking your work. For the affair. For how I treated you. For all of it. Gabrielle waited. She'd learned that silence was often more powerful than words. I was arrogant, Cameron continued. I thought I was special. Thought the success was because of me. But it wasn't. It was you. It was always you. I know, Gabrielle said simply. Sterling Enterprises is being sold. The board forced me out last month. Everything I built, everything you built is gone. I'm sorry to hear that. And she was in a distant way. Not sorry for Cameron specifically, but sorry that something she created had been destroyed. I deserve it, Cameron said quietly. I know that. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. And I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I know. That I understand what I lost. Gabrielle looked at him. This man who'd been her husband. Who'd shared her bed. Who'd promised to love her forever and then thrown her away like garbage. She felt nothing. No anger. No pain. No lingering love or regret. Just peace. I appreciate you saying that, she said. I hope you find whatever you're looking for next. Do you think? Cameron hesitated. Do you think we could ever? I don't know. Start over? Try again? There it was. The real reason he'd come. No, Gabrielle said gently but firmly. We can't. I've moved on, Cameron. I'm happy now. Genuinely happy. And that happiness doesn't include you. He nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer but had to ask anyway. What about Diane? She'd like to apologize too. Tell your mother I don't need her apology. I don't need anything from either of you. I'm content with my life exactly as it is. Okay. Cameron looked at the floor. I'll go. But Gabrielle, thank you. For everything you did for me, even if I never acknowledged it. You saved me once. Even though I didn't deserve it. You're welcome, Gabrielle said. Goodbye, Cameron. She watched him leave, shoulders hunched, looking every bit as defeated as he felt. And then she went back to her party. That evening, Gabrielle drove to her house. Her beautiful, peaceful house that she'd bought with her own money. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat on her back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Boss, we got 3 new client inquiries today. All because of the expansion announcement. Gabrielle smiled. Business was good. Life was good. She thought about the past 2 years. the divorce, the legal battles, the fear and uncertainty. The moment when she decided to fight back instead of accepting what Cameron wanted to give her. That decision had changed everything. She'd reclaimed her work, reclaimed her reputation, reclaimed herself, and she'd built something better than Sterling Enterprises had ever been. Something that was truly hers. Something no one could take away. Her phone buzzed again. This time an email from a young woman who'd read the Business Innovator article. Thank you for sharing your story. I've been working as my boyfriend's unpaid assistant for his startup for 3 years. After reading about you, I realized I deserve better. I'm starting my own company next month. Thank you for showing me it's possible. Gabrielle replied, You're welcome. Remember to document everything. Keep your work in your name. Never give away credit for what you've created. And believe in yourself. You've got this. As the sun set completely, Gabrielle realized something. She wasn't angry anymore. Wasn't bitter. Wasn't carrying the weight of what Cameron had done to her. She'd forgiven herself for staying too long, for not seeing the signs earlier, for believing love was enough. And she'd moved forward, built something new, created a life she was genuinely proud of. The past was past. Cameron was past. The pain was past. All that remained was the future. Her future. Bright and unlimited and entirely her own. She raised her glass to the darkening sky, to second chances, to fighting back, to women everywhere who refused to stay silent, to justice, to freedom, to happy endings that weren't about finding love or fixing relationships or being rescued by someone else, to happy endings that were about rescuing yourself. Gabrielle smiled. She was free. She was successful. She was happy. And that was the best revenge of all.